Welcome, and on behalf of University Career Services, I am excited to introduce our wonderful company panel for this afternoon. Our topic today will be interview preparation for data science and analytics. We have a great lineup for you here today. I'll take a second and introduce everyone. My name is Stephanie Mcintyre. I'm the Associate Director of Career Education within University Career Services. We have some wonderful relationships with partners throughout all industry and company types. And here today to represent some of the functions within data science and analytics, to talk about what their company offers and to give you some wonderful perspective around interviewing best practices, how to put yourself forward as a top candidate, a marketable applicant for data science and analytics roles. And also we'll learn a little bit from company to company about recruiting processes, interview expectations, and the like. Here from Advanced Auto Parts, we have Deanna Jackson. She's a senior corporate recruiter. We have from Centene Corporation, Pamela Baum, a college recruiting program manager. From Deluxe Corporation, we have Jeff Hansen, senior talent acquisition partner. And Mark Summers from Prometheus Group, and he is a development team lead. So I am so welcome to have such expertise in the room today. And what I'm going to do is give them all an individualized opportunity, starting with Deanna, then moving down to Pamela, and Jeff and Mark, to just give yourselves a few more minutes just to introduce yourself and your company. And after that, I will take off this back screen so we can feel a little bit more intimate of a crowd. And then I'll jump into the first question. So welcome everyone. And Deanna, I'll let you start us off.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. As Stephanie had mentioned, my name's Deanna Jackson. I'm a senior corporate recruiter with Advanced Auto Parts. I've been with Advanced for a little over a year. My claim to fame is that I actually started the same week that everyone was sent home for the pandemic. So it's been a little bit interesting onboarding virtually. One thing I can say that I truly adore about Advanced Auto Parts is our commitment to growing talent, our investment in diversity inclusion efforts, and our overall culture of kind of keeping everyone whole and really investing in people over profits. So I'm really excited about being here today, and I look forward to being able to provide some insights and information on how to prepare for interviews for the data science function.
Deanna, thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Pamela Baum. I'm with Centene Corporation. I like to joke around. Centene is probably the largest company that nobody's ever heard of. We are a Fortune 24 company, globally 57. So we're huge, and we've grown quite a bit in the last few years through acquisition, but also expansion of our business. We're a healthcare company. We mainly work with government-sponsored health insurance and healthcare. You may have heard of Medicaid and Medicare, but we also have products that on the marketplace or that came out of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, as you may have heard about. We provide healthcare to our military. We're also a federal contractor, and we have international subsidiaries as well. So we're based all over the country, but our headquarters is St. Louis. And we have announced in the last year, our East Coast headquarters is in North Carolina, in Charlotte. So we are hiring quite a bit in North Carolina and looking to expand our presence in the state of North Carolina. So it's an exciting time. And of course, technology, data analysts, all of those types of careers and skills are necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you represented today, Pamela. And Jeff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Hansen. I'm a senior talent acquisition specialist which is just kind of a fancy way of saying a recruiter for Deluxe Corporation. I guess we are the second largest company no one's ever, no, I'm just kidding. Deluxe Corporation as a company was actually founded back in 1915. So this is our 106th trip around the sun. And we were founded by the creator of the personal checkbook. So that's what Deluxe did for the first 95 years we were in business. We were a vendor selling the checks, banking supplies, and other business products. And that's how we kind of grew our 4.5 million small business customers, along with 4,600 financial institutions and the partners themselves, and really gained that trust. Over the last 10 to 15 years, we've really transformed our company into being the trusted business technology company we are today. We're more focused on partnering with businesses of all shapes and sizes to help themselves promote themselves, brand themselves, grow, and even more increasingly function. We're the 4th largest website and email domain provider in the world. So we work with more businesses on a higher percentage than any other company in that space. So really, we are a fully encompassing business solutions company that really focuses on doing what's best for the business. It's kind of, we always say it's great to work for a win-win business where only if our customers are successful will we be successful. We are headquartered in Minneapolis, so if you couldn't tell from the accent, you will by the end of the time I'm speaking for sure. I'm located in Minnesota. Our 2nd largest hub is in Atlanta. But we have locations all across the country, opportunities for data, business intelligence, creative strategies, and performance tracking and optimization analysts in New York City. We have another large hub in the Kansas City area, as well as a presence in Salt Lake and in California. So really across the country as well as in Canada. So really excited for this opportunity. I have been our corporate campus recruiter for the last 3 years. So having the opportunity to work with students kind of throughout all stages, whether it's coming up on graduation and looking for that first full-time opportunity, or just getting into kind of the interview flow for internships. I'm always excited to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, Jeff, and thank you for that wonderful information. And then Mark.
Hey, everybody. So like Stephanie said, my name is Mark Summers. I'm a development team lead over at Prometheus Group. So my role throughout interviews is typically doing the technical part of it. Prometheus Group, our company, is headquartered out of Raleigh. So a lot of our hires are either graduates from NC State, UNC, UNCW, App State, a lot of the local colleges. I myself was an NC State graduate, so hopefully you guys don't hate me too much. But Prometheus Group specializes in asset management software, largely built on SAP, but more growing into the Oracle and Maximo space as well. Some of our larger customers include Google, Marathon Oil Company, Phillips 66, some of the larger refineries around the US and around the Middle East. We have various offices throughout Australia, Leeds, UK, some in South America, but our headquarters and our largest office is here in Raleigh. So this is where we're doing a large portion of our hiring is right local in Raleigh.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that to all of our panelists. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can focus on just our panelists and, our question and answer. If time permits, after our pre-developed questions, we will open it up to anyone else who is on the line today that may have additional questions that we are not going to cover within our next maybe hour in 20 or 25 minutes. For some of our initial questions, I will have everyone on our panel chime in, and then for other questions throughout, just for timing, I have selected certain individuals for certain questions. For the next few questions, we will just continue with that same order of our panel for these questions. And so without further ado, I'll jump right into that. Our first question is, what types of skills and experience are most important to you as recruiters, company representatives, that you want to see in applicants for data science and analytics related roles? And we will start with Deanna.
Thank you. So for us in Advance, I recruit specifically for our marketing and merchandising teams. So for those roles, we like to see those who have had prior experience as it relates to creating products, the digital, creating digital products, whether it's, in a marketing basis or more of in a business scenario. So whether that's through an internship, whether that's through a personal project that they've leveraged, whether that's through assisting a startup, we just like to be able to see the skills that they've the real life application of the skills that they've acquired. Additionally, we like to see them having exposure to Python, R, and more recently having some understanding of or exposure to NLP.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Pamela.
So I'll talk from two perspectives. One more like the entry level full-time role, and then coming in as an intern, because I think, we don't expect you to know everything and to have advanced skills necessarily when you're coming in as an intern. But for an entry level, and some of this would be similar. So I would say, having some of those technical skills high up on your resume is a good thing. But we typically, for a data analyst, we look for advanced Excel experience and so Microsoft skills access, utilizing some sort of business intelligence tools, whether it be Tableau. I think Tableau is probably the most common one, but any of those tools, Power BI, if you have those kinds of experiences. SQL, that's big for us as well. And any kind of, if you've had classes in statistics, I think we look for that as well. And that would be like relevant if you're looking at an intern role, and any kind of experience with statistical analysis. We use a lot of different technology as well, but it depends on the area of the business. We use Python, we use R, but I would say for regular data analyst roles, these are probably the most common skills that we would look for. And having some kind of coding experience, being able to, if you've had experience working on any kind of data audits or reconciliation of data, data warehousing. This is a new term for me because I'm not a technology person, but ETL, which in our business, we have a lot of different systems because we've integrated or are in the process of integrating different companies and different systems. We have our provider networks where we utilize technology. So the doctors and hospitals that utilize our services, and then we have our member portals as well. So there's a lot of movement of data, so that, being able to bring data from multiple sources into a centralized database is important too. And then just, your soft skills as well across the board. Good communication skills, enthusiasm, being passionate, willing to learn, all of those kinds of characteristics are important.
That's great to hear. Yeah. And Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, so echoing what Pamela and Deanna already went over, making sure that any position you're applying to, I think the biggest thing, especially when looking at applicants for roles within Deluxe, would be having, first off, those the skills that match. So when you're looking at basic qualifications on job descriptions, that you meet those basic qualifications, and then being able to look at and find as many of the preferred qualifications as you can and highlighting those on your resume. it's kind of an old cliche, you want your resume to match the job you're applying to, but it really does make sense, and it really is important to cater the resume and have the highlights that match up what a job description and qualifications are looking for at the top, or very visible to any recruiter or possible hiring manager that's viewing those resumes. And then one of the things that I like to talk about as well when looking and designing your resume is having something that will stand out from someone else. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have, you know, crazy graphics or pictures or anything like that on the resumes, but in your background, kind of digging a little bit deeper. Deluxe is a company, we really thrive on inclusivity as well as diversity, as well as people having lives outside of work. To be honest, being able to show passions and understand that you're a person and really have that come across. People that are may have the best skills in the world, but tend to be a little bit more quote unquote robotic throughout the process, or don't really show that passion for the position or other things they do in life, generally aren't the people that get moved through the process with our organization.
Right. It's so exciting to hear you all emphasize the resume. We had a workshop last week that really focused on developing your resume, because we know that that is what's not going to get you the job, but at least going to get you into the interview. And so I'm glad that we're setting a foundation today for talking more about interviewing and some of those steps and stages, by starting it out by just talking about what skill sets are being highlighted on the resume, because that's going to easily shift into the interview process. So I appreciate that. And Mark.
Yep. So here at Prometheus, we like seeing applicants who've shown us sort of their own personal interest in data analysis. A lot of the time this shows through our applicants. A lot of our recent hires have done their own certifications through these large organizations like Google and IBM. A lot of companies are now offering certifications in analytics. So that's very useful for us to see, because sometimes data analysis and data science is a new field. So there's not a lot of degrees in it. So we like to see if a student doesn't have a relative degree, that they've expressed interest by completing their own certifications on their own time. On top of that, a portion of our data analyst role is customer facing, taking requests of what customers' reports they want to see. So any prior experience, or we kind of judge based on our interview how this candidate would interact with clients, is a huge plus for us. So.
Great. Thank you for that as well, Mark. We're going to go in the same order for this next question, because I think that I want to make sure that everyone from your differing perspectives at different organizations can share. Please share some highlights within your recruitment processes that just students generally should be aware of. And if there have been any changes, what maybe based on COVID-19 or anything like that, that there may have been to your program's recruitment process over this past year?
Absolutely. So I will jump in. So for us, with regards to our recruitment process, I can start right with the changes that the pandemic has made. Almost all of our interviews are virtual. So one tip that I give consistently is to try the link out ahead of time. For my candidates, I even tell them, if we need to schedule a meeting, leveraging the technology, whether it's Zoom or Teams, ahead of time, or WebEx, I'm open to doing that. Oftentimes you can get a friend or family member and say, hey, can I send this link to you to make sure that I have everything set up correctly? The worst time to have, or to test out a link is 5 to 10 minutes before the interview is supposed to start. If you're using a new technology, it may take additional time to download. There may be an update. Nowadays with technology as it is, you just want to make sure that you prepare as much as possible. And then on the other side of that, if you do have technological issues, make sure you're communicating that as soon as you're aware. Right now, again, with all of us being virtual, there is some level of understanding. But again, just wanting to make sure that you're effectively communicating that as soon as you're aware of that. Additionally, with regards to our interview process, we typically go through, several levels or several tiers of interviews. Me personally, I try to be very transparent with my candidates to let them know how many levels of interviews they could expect. But that would be something else that I would definitely say, in interviewing with larger organizations or corporations, just having that understanding that, there may be several rounds of interviews. And of course, as the name of the game goes, the further you go, the better, your chances are in being selected. But it's definitely fair game to ask your recruiter to say, just wanting to plan out, how many, interviews could I expect for the process. Additionally, along that same vein, if you're interviewing with other companies and you're going to get an offer soon, it's again okay to mention that, so that way your recruiter that you're working with can kind of make the team aware that they may need to move that process along. But those are just some highlights for us as far as our interview process and how we've been affected by the pandemic.
Right. So Dan, I'm hearing multiple rounds and obviously a lot of recruitment, a lot of interviewing virtually. We'll talk some more about that. I'm glad that I'm getting your perspective. Love to hear other perspectives on just the whole virtual piece as well. Thank you for that. Pamela.
Yeah, and we are doing pretty much everything virtually as well, in terms of engaging with students and that whole interview process. And we typically have 1 to 2 rounds of interviews, I would say, and it depends on what the role is, the team. With internships, we have never been able to do this before at Centene, but we're looking to host interview days in the technology space because we have identified our roles ahead of time, and who's going to be involved with that ahead of time, where we hadn't been able to do that before. It typically came in and our positions came in individually. And so we were recruiting just in time, essentially individually for roles. And I always recommend candidates apply for multiple roles that are relevant for you, and just in case too, because you may be looked at for one, but you might not have been looked at for another one. So definitely consider that. In terms of interviewing, I don't personally use this tool, but we do use it at Centene for recruiting. They're pre-recorded interviews, so that's something you might want to get used to, using one of those types of tools. HireVue is really popular. We use Modern Hire, it's called, and you can practice on those tools. So if you haven't used that type of a tool before, definitely get yourself familiar just in case. Like I said, I don't use it for my intern interviews, especially in this virtual world, because I feel like it's a little bit impersonal, but I know other people that do. And for full-time roles, it is something that we typically use.
Thanks, that's great to know. And because we recognize as University Career Services that parts of differing companies' interview processes, that those pre-recorded interviews are utilized, we have a platform known as Big Interview that can help you with those virtual interviews and pre-recorded questions to get comfortable with your presentation being on screen and being recorded in your responses. Thanks, Pamela. Jeff, anything that's new in your areas, changes, or just some highlights in your process?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I want to highlight kind of right off the bat, and this is a 2021 total virtual world type thing, but creep on LinkedIn profiles. I can't emphasize that enough for candidates. Candidates that connect with me prior to us meeting. And generally all you have to do is you're going to get an email link that's going to have the person's name and the company. You type in my name and the company, you're going to see me in black and white. So I stand out a little bit more, a little easier to find with a name like Jeff Hansen. But hiring managers never cease to comment on it. Wow, this person reached out. And especially when you're looking for a role that potentially has 30, 40, 50, 120 applicants for. Anything you can do in that instance to reach out and just say, hey, I'm really excited for the interview. I probably wouldn't fire 45 questions off in one of those connections, but just a couple little quick tips on that. It's something that's newer to a recruitment process, where even 5 years ago, I don't know if that would have been as, expected or possibly even off-putting, but in today's interview process and application process, I definitely think it's appropriate when interviewing. But just like a lot of the team has said, we are doing 100% virtual interviews. Our company decided right off the bat that we were going to be a company that made sure that our most important assets with our employees are as safe as possible. So, having that technology backing and the capability to go remote. Now, with that said, kind of like been highlighted a little earlier, there's multiple rounds of interviews, and it's a little easier for companies, and especially a team like ours, to share more information in between those rounds of interviews versus if someone's coming on site for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you don't really have that opportunity. So just making sure staying consistent throughout your interview process is something that's really big with our team, to make sure that people are hearing the same thing, because there's so much more communication between interviewees, and then also sharing applications and resumes prior to interviews as well. So keeping everything consistent, making sure everything is up to date and grammatically sound and everything along those lines, because if one person catches something throughout the process, it's more of an impression now, I would say, versus just handing someone a resume before they sit with them face to face. So that's one of the things that's really changed throughout this process, is how many people and how much communication from a corporate standpoint happens before the interviews. But other than that, it's really our teams still look for the traditional things you want to see: that passion for the job, your interest, your research you've done, things along those lines throughout the interview process, because that's always going to make a candidate stand out.
Great, Jeff. Thank you so much. And Mark, any highlights from you?
Sure. So we're on the smaller side of things on our company. So we don't have as stringent of an interview process, I'd say, because our applicant pool tends to be just not as large as these larger companies. But we typically start with a phone screen from a recruiter. It's something I haven't had to do as of lately, but and then we start with a additional phone screen. That's a conversation that happens with me or somebody on my team. It's sort of a more technical oriented phone screen to make sure that we don't bring anybody into our in-person interview that we wouldn't, that we want to make sure that people who come to our interviews are prepared technically for their that portion of our interview. But some highlights to do with the changes with the pandemic. This job market right now is currently very fast paced. Candidates are coming and going on and off the market very quickly. So I've worked pretty closely with my recruiter to make it a goal to get our candidate their first offer. So some of our more recent hires have moved through our process pretty quickly, 2 to 3 weeks. And I just want to make it the goal that our offer reaches them first before some of the other companies that they're interviewing with.
Great, that's an excellent strategy. Thank you for that, Mark. This next question I will ask just this one will be for everyone as well, and so we'll go in that same order. What combination of factors make a student most competitive for roles related to analytics, data science, just from your perspective? So I've heard a lot of folks talk about transferable skills. Mark, you just emphasized that right away. You need to hear about the technical skills to make sure you're even prepared to move forward. But what are some of the ideal combinations that really are most marketable for your opportunities?
And so I will say for advanced, we find that most folks that apply have the technical skill. So to everyone's prior comment, at this point now, it's a matter of helping that interviewer see you in the role. So it is those soft skills. It's your ability to sell. It's your ability to be able to really communicate effectively to that hiring team that they need you as the one on their team. I always say the interview is, once you get to the interview, they've invested the time, they know that you can do the role. Now is the time for you to sell yourself and to really use the language to be able to communicate effectively why you're the best choice or why they should select you for the position. Different ways that you can do that. Some people take for granted the fact that it's a virtual interview, and something as simple as dressing up, for your interview and really taking full advantage and really understanding, the fact that it is, an interview and then they are speaking with you concerning a future career opportunity can make all the difference. Even a matter of sending, thank you notes. And so although that's something that, typically was a little bit more popular, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, but it's still something that, it can definitely help to set you apart in having, just that quick follow-up note. And it's another way to kind of rub your hiring team as well. So as Jeff mentioned, oftentimes when you have your interview, you receive your interviewer's email and name. So in that, leverage that to send, that thank you note. And I even recommend a day or two, a day after, because again, it's another opportunity for you to put yourself in the forefront of their mind after the interview's been completed. So if they have, 5 or 6 days worth of interviews and they met you on day 1, now day 2, you've put yourself back in their mind thinking of, you and your skill set. And in crafting the thank you note, I recommend that as well, mentioning, or highlighting those pieces where, you could add value to the organization. So those are just a couple of ways where I can say, we've all talked about the hard skill, but as far as setting yourself apart, it's definitely going to be that soft skill and being able to really communicate effectively or sell, why you're the perfect fit.
Thanks, Deanna. That's important. Pamela.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. When you're interviewing with a specific company, that particular company wants to know, we want to know that you're interested in us and why are you interested in us? So preparing that when you go into your interview, doing some research about the company that you're interviewing with, and understanding a little bit more about like the culture of that company and how you feel like you could fit in and how you can contribute as well, like what's important to that organization. So for an example, like Centene, we're very mission and purpose driven because of what we do. We work with people who are uninsured and don't necessarily have access to healthcare. So we want our people that we're bringing in to be passionate about what we do and making an impact in the organization from any kind of a role, essentially, whether it's a technology role or anything else as well, a business related role. So I would say that, and then make sure you have questions too. I'm always surprised how many candidates don't come up with questions. So definitely make sure you prepare some questions and bring it back to maybe what whoever you're interviewing with is talking about with you, and even in your follow-up, you can connect something that you heard about in your interview and then use that as a way to follow up as well.
Great. Thank you, Pamela. Jeff.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Pamela was saying there, know the company culture. Look into, see what you can find, know how to view a Glassdoor review, know how to look at all those sorts of things. I always say it's kind of like the 10% rule when you're looking at Glassdoor reviews. The bottom 10% and the top 10% don't really matter. Look at the people that are ranking 2s, 3s, and 4s, not the people that are 1s and 5s that are just, the biggest cheerleaders or probably weren't a great employee or just didn't have a great experience. The outliers is what I like to call them. But look at those types of things, and you can ask questions about those those things as well. You know, you never want to obviously take a shot at anyone, but if someone does say something about a company culture that was their favorite or something along those lines, it's a really big opportunity to be able to set yourself apart by having done that research. Also, Deluxe, we are huge on things like hiring manager videos, culture videos. We do videos from our ERGs, our employee resource groups, all of those sorts of things. So as much as you can look into, and again, not talking about 3 hours of pre-research, please don't do that. 15, 20 minutes, half hour tops if you're really interested, but knowing a couple of things outside of the actual job description, because coming into these, like we've already talked about, preferred qualifications, basic qualifications, knowing the job description inside and out. And then I'll give the example of the worst answer ever, which is, you know, when a recruiter says, hey, you know, what really interested you, or tell me what you know about the company, and you say, and you get the answer of, you know, I don't really know that much. I've just been applying to a lot of jobs with this title. It's, oh my gosh, I wish I didn't take the time to speak with this person. But no, so that's just a few things that I have to add or can let you know can really help you stand out as a candidate.
Thanks, Jeff. Definitely. And Mark.
So I'll say on top of everything that's been covered so far, they've done a great job. Some things I've appreciated hearing throughout my interviews are when candidates express curiosity about not only what the company as a whole is doing, but what they would be doing specifically in their roles. So the more they show curiosity in the day-to-day of what they should expect to be doing, I appreciated that a lot. Also showing your passion and skills throughout personal projects or your highlighted school projects is definitely a huge plus in my eyes. That's something I've really appreciated seeing, because I'm curious about other degree programs and how students have what they've worked on through that and what they work on their own personal time. So those are some things that stand out and make you competitive in my eyes.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for all of this perspective thus far. We're going to jump around and maybe skip through. I'm speaking to the panel for a second, skip through to some other questions just based on the nature of where our conversation is going. And maybe we can talk about experiential learning and what does that look like, or what does that mean in your company? So for example, do you support, you know, formalized internship programs? For those of you who do, maybe to also share a little bit about converting, interns into full-time employees, and what does that look like? I know that that's a differing perspective and approach based on company and sometimes even company size. So I'll present that out to everyone else, and we can start with Deanna again.
Absolutely. So we do have a formal 10-week internship program, and I have a cheat sheet, so give me 2 seconds. Our program starts May through July 22nd. I wanted to make sure I got those dates correct, which we are actively interviewing for in order to fill for next year. And so for us, to your point, Stephanie, we do have we build in engagements and opportunities to be able to learn through working with us through the internship. A lot of those engagements also include time with our CEO, just so that way he can kind of pour in from a leadership development perspective. So it's a really robust program that we develop in hopes that at the end, we're able to then find, positions and role within the organization to convert to full-time. So even if at the end of that specific time frame, we don't have openings, we do still remain in contact, and then we'll attempt to try to convert later down the line or through that maintained connection. So I want to say last year, we were able to extend 100% of the interns we were able to extend offers, whether it was part-time, full-time, or whether it was delayed, based on graduation. So we do our best to not only invest in the learning opportunity and in gaining exposure to various parts of the business, but we also want to then invest in, continued growth within Advance. Grow talent is one of our core competencies. and we take that very seriously as far as, really cultivating, growing, and grooming our leaders to be able to move forward within the organization.
Wonderful. So Deanna, I'll stick with you for a moment, particularly because you emphasize this concept of growing talent that's already internal to the organization. Can you give some examples on the types of functions that students as interns and then employees have as it relates to data science, analytics? Like, what does that work look like just based on what your organization does?
Absolutely. So I can speak more specific to the marketing merchandising side, being that that's what I have direct oversight for from a talent acquisition perspective. I know from a data analytics perspective for our merchandising team, that could come out in the form of a merchandising coordinator. So similar to what Pamela mentioned, you'd be, extrapolating data, leveraging SQL, being able to then convert said data and then presenting it to our category managers and assistant category managers so that they can then leverage that to be able to make decisions, whether it's based on pricing, market trends, whether it's vendor information, catalog, SKU maintenance. All of that would be from more of an analytics perspective. Some of the types of work that would be done. And then from a data science perspective, it would be more so creating digital products that our marketing team can then leverage and deploy. So they help with really, kind of like I mentioned, having that natural language processing experience. So they would then be able to translate, verbal feedback that we've gotten, and then being able to extrapolate the data from that and then hand that over to our insights team, our customer insights team, so that they can then leverage that to best build out our website or best build out our e-commerce or apply the feedback that they may have gotten from, recording from the store cameras. And, from then again, leveraging that conversation, turning it into data, and then being able to leverage that and disperse that throughout the organization so we can make better marketing decisions and create better programs.
Right, data-driven decisions. That's excellent. Thank you, Deanna. Pamela, same thing for you, internship roles, how does that maybe translate into full-time opportunities? And really, what is the function and the work of interns and full-time employees?
Yeah, so we have an internship program, formal. We've had it for a long time. We typically have 100 to 200 interns, I would say, every summer. It'll be interesting to see what happens because we are planning to have 110 interns in the technology space alone this summer. So I don't have a final number of what the entire program looks like. But it's from May typically until early August, 12-week program. We focus on giving you guys exposure to leaders around the organization and learning more about the different departments of what we do, because we are a complex organization. We also have workshops based off of professional development, skill development, and really honing in on that. And then we have a mentoring component as part of the internship program. And then we also have what's called Signature Project. And so each of our interns are typically working with their day-to-days with their team, and they're given almost like a capstone project that you're working on. And at the end of the internship, towards the end, you'll be presenting it to your team, leaders on your team. And then we have what's called Signature Project Week, where you're able to present your project to other people around the organization and talk about the impact that you made and what you learned during your time. We do use the internship program to bring in talent into the organization. So converting interns into full-time roles is important to us. Last year, we converted half of our interns into full-time. Our internship program is open for any year in school, freshman through a graduating senior. So it depends, obviously, like what year you are in school, whether you're qualified for full-time at that time. But we do also like to keep our interns working with us beyond the internship program if your schedule allows. So a lot of our interns will stay on working part-time during the school year if that's something that you want to do. But we also keep in contact to consider people who will students who are ready to graduate or who are still with us for those full-time roles. And then with the data analyst role, I mean, it could be in a lot of different departments in our organization. It could be in a finance function. It could be in an operations function. It could be in the IT area. So it really depends on the area that you're in terms of what you'll be working on a day-to-day basis. But essentially, what I had mentioned before with those skills of data audits and reconciliation, coding, those types of things. And I'll give you an example because we do use artificial intelligence and we look for efficiencies in the organization. So there's a lot going on with that. And one of our interns projects, don't know if any of you have heard of prior authorizations, but in healthcare, like if you need to have maybe a surgery or a special procedure, typically the hospital or doctor is going to require a prior authorization, and prior authorizations are a big headache for everybody. So we had one of our interns work on a project to be able to identify those prior authorizations that were more urgent so that we could attend to them quicker, because processing of prior authorizations is a big headache for doctors and hospitals, but also for our organization. And we want to make things easier for people to get what they need to have done, have that healthcare service that they need. So that's just one example, but there's a lot of that around the organization.
Great, that's excellent. And Pamela, I'll give you a follow-up question because it's come in while you were sharing about your internship program. A student is asking or sharing that there'll be a December graduate. So coming up at the end of this semester, is it better for a December grad to look for full-time employment, or do you have any internships that are for recent graduates?
So because we only have our internship program in the summer, the timing is a little bit off for a December grad to come into our internship program. I would say if you're, let's say, graduating in May and you want to explore still, you can definitely come into the internship program and then be considered for full-time after that. So I would say probably just for yourself and timing, because obviously you probably want to get working and get started on your career right away, that full-time is probably better. And I'll share my email in the chat, and if because I know we have some entry-level roles open now, and if you want to email me your resume, I'll definitely share it with some hiring leaders. But we tend to hire for full-time just in time, just because of the nature of our organization and our business. So typically I advise candidates, if they're looking for full-time roles, to look closer to the time that you're graduating.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that as well. And then Jeff, we'll also turn this over to you to give your perspective on internships versus full-time roles, and maybe what is the bridge between those two.
Yeah, so right now with Deluxe, we have a division of Deluxe that's called FMCG, and they're a data-driven marketing agency based in Manhattan. And we currently have roles posted for hire in the summer of 2022. And it's actually not uncommon for us to have, just kind of circle back to that previous question, to have people that graduate in December get hired to start in July. And that gives people the opportunity, take a semester, do a fun job, work in retail, restaurants, something that you have the opportunity to work part-time and kind of live that opposite than the normal 9-to-5 life before hopping into. And that's something that we certainly encourage. Now it's a little awkward with travel because of everything going on with COVID, or it also gives opportunities there. Or stay in school for an extra semester and get some extra credits, take some more passion classes, get those certifications promotions that everyone's talking about, because those are things that can really help people advance quicker in positions and move up faster. Is, you know, if you can start any sort of additional certifications from your IBMs, your Googles, things like that around the data analytics world. The way Deluxe handles our internship program is very similar to the other teams, where it is a 12-week summer program. So that's where our traditional interns are. But then also we do post internships that are outside of the program. The big difference there, and that's kind of what I wanted to address, is something that you should ask as questions when you're coming into an internship. Asking the employer, is this a experience-based or a project-based internship? I'm going to be sitting in a room with a bunch of other interns completing a project, which is not uncommon with a lot of tech companies, because they want to see what someone can do. But essentially, it's an additional, 3-month semester of school working on one big project. And then coming out of, or is it experience-based? Am I sitting with other team members on a day-to-day basis, doing work for a company that can be seen by the rest of the company? And that's typically how Deluxe's internship shakeout is, working with a team, but also having that opportunity to be a part of a program, which means you are meeting with leaders from around the company. You're meeting with other interns to see what they're doing. We've even, our internships are generally geared more towards the sophomores and juniors, just being that we don't have necessarily as many full-time positions slotted. So seniors definitely have come into the program, been successful in it, and then offered jobs. We just don't guarantee them as much, I guess, as some others. So, but then we've had people that have been interns as a sophomore and come back and intern in a completely different area of the business as a after their junior year, because they saw how cool IT security was and how interested they got in it just from the other interns. And then they spent their junior year shifting a little bit of their focus of their computer science degree to that IT security, and put them in a position to take a totally different position than they previously had. But it just also to echo the other panel members, data analytics, this is the perfect type of role to get it, or education to get right now, because all across companies, we're hiring business analysts, we're hiring marketing analysts, we're hiring IT analysts, and all of these skills that you're learning in these programs and in the computer program software that you're learning is transferable across all these areas. It's just, where's your focus? Are you more of a business oriented person? Are you more of an IT oriented person? Do you want kind of a marriage between the two? Because there are those roles across organizations, or finance and operations as well.
Great. Thanks for sharing the diversity of the different types of roles and functions individuals can play within your organization. Mark, I'll let you round out this portion of our conversation, give us some perspective from Prometheus around internships, full-time roles, and then what does just that function look like for individuals within these types of roles, analytics, data science?
Sure. So I will say, based on Jeff's description of types of internships, Prometheus definitely offers a pure experience-based internship. We do them full year round, all across. So we do some summer internships, and then a lot of those move to part-time throughout the school year. But we also have open hirings for internships throughout the year. So when a manager requests an internship, they'll get posted as they become available. I myself started at the company as an intern. So I started between my sophomore and junior year. And I worked a full summer there, and then stayed on part-time, did another full summer. And I was working under a software team the entire time. So I definitely worked with, it felt like the same role I'm doing now. So it really gave me a good experience into what working day to day with a team at Prometheus would look like. We offer a lot of software engineering internships, but as well as data analyst internships. My team has the data analysts under them, so they'd be working close with all of my current full hires. So that's what our internship looks like.
That's excellent. That really is. I'll throw this out to everyone on the panel, and then you can chime in as you feel necessary. I believe Deanna mentioned it, just the concept of having questions prepared as a candidate, as an interviewee, to be able to present to the interviewer or the panel of interviewers at the appropriate time. What role does that play for each one of you in your organization? And just what types of questions should students start to think about and have prepared as an interviewee? Anyone can chime in.
I'll start. So you definitely want to have questions prepared that communicates to the hiring team that you're invested in the role, that you're already planning or forward thinking. And again, I will say that gets them to the point where they can see you in the role. So one question that I always, ask those to leverage when I'm coaching is to say, what does success look like in this role? What does success look like in 30, 60, 90 days? So what that then does is it allows the hiring manager to then begin to communicate to you past the job description and past your skill set, and start to begin to strategically or envision the role 30, 60, 90 days. And it also opens the door for you to then be able to communicate your skill set and how you may even, begin to attain or hit, what your plan of action would be at 30, 60, 90 days. So it really creates that opportunity to kind of have that dialogue to where they can then see whether or not you would be someone that they would feel comfortable managing. And it gives them a little bit of your thought process and how you would process, the goals that they've met. Another great question to ask is, oh my goodness, and I just lost it just that fast. So you definitely want to have those questions prepared. Like I said, it allows them to be able to see you in a different light. Another great one to ask is about their what keeps them at the organization. Because then it helps you to kind of get a more in-depth view into culture there at the organization. And then, so this was the one that I had forgotten, was also creating the opportunity for them to be able to communicate any areas where they feel maybe of concern with your skill set. So a great way to ask that question is, I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. Do you see any areas, in this interview to where, it's giving you pause or hesitation? Is there anything additional that I could speak to, or is there any other additional skill sets that you have not heard from me as of yet that you wish you would have? Because then it gives you one more opportunity before the interview closes to really drive home, the full gamut of your skill set. And it may have just been in conversation that, maybe a specific skill or technology that they want you to be familiar with just had not come up, but now creates that opportunity for you to be able to have that conversation.
A good one. I really appreciate hearing that. That's excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? Jeff, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say one other direction you can always take questions to, especially if a lot of, the who, what, where, whens, and whys are covered by a recruiter or something like that, is finding something within the company that you have a passion for and asking about that. For example, all over our Deluxe job site, we talk about our investment within the community and our inclusion and diversity efforts. So ask, if you have those passions, especially for the service side, we do 24 hours of VTO or volunteer time off for all employees every year across the board. So, and that's available information out there to see. So asking, hey, what do people do at this time? Or is this something that people get together as a team and do, or is this something more individual passion? Asking about if companies have employee resource groups or ERGs and what those look like within those organizations, especially the larger employers. If you're not familiar with ERGs, anyone on this, please go and start researching, because this is a huge initiative that over the last 5 years has really changed a lot of cultures in a lot of companies. For example, just kind of offset, we have a African American as well as veterans are two examples of ERGs within Deluxe. And they started in 2020, and in 2021, for the first time, we observed Martin Luther King Junior Day as a company closure holiday, as well as we'll be observing Veterans Days. So it's kind of a put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to have these employee resource opportunities, they're not just after school clubs, they can actually affect company cultures. And just kind of knowing things like that can be the difference, you know, if deciding on, hey, this is the direction I want to go, or, you know, is this other company offering something that makes more sense on my end? So thinking about it being a little selfishly as well, to make sure you're getting the right fit, especially if you're going to have multiple offers coming.
Great. And Jeff, what this also communicates to you or any other recruiter is that they really have a genuine interest. They have passions, and they've done the legwork. They've looked on your website, they've done some research, they know more about the company, and by way of asking certain questions shows that they're already minimally informed about some things. That's great. Anyone else to chime in on this concept of, yep, Pamela?
I was just going to add to what Jeff said, to understand, I guess, from whoever you're interviewing with, what are those opportunities to learn and develop and grow within the company, because that also shows that you're interested and invested in being at the company longer term. And so to show that you're interested, and for them to really talk through what does that look like on this particular team, but also what does that look like corporate wide? Are there opportunities to learn and grow, and how is the company going to, you know, invest in me so that I want to stay at this particular organization longer term?
Excellent, great. Mark, any final thoughts on that as well?
I think they've covered a lot of the good question bases, but I'd like to add kind of what I've reflected on earlier. To understand what the role you're interviewing about is for, especially on a day-to-day level. Your hiring manager that you're interviewing with, sort of towards the end, should definitely be able to fill you in on what you'd expect to see. So it's definitely something that it also shows them that you're curious in what you're applying for. Another thing to ask for, actually, I also just lost it. That's about all that I could come up with. I'm sorry, I don't have more.
No, that's excellent, Mark. I'm actually going to work in reverse order, so I'm going to keep you on the spot with our next question as well, Mark. So what role, if any, does GPA play into recruiting decision-making? I know some organizations really look at GPA for both internships and job opportunities. How does that work at Prometheus, if at all? And if you can just share a little bit about that perspective.
Sure. So Prometheus has no formal GPA requirement. I think everybody on this panel will tell you that a higher GPA can only help you stand out. At the beginning of our recruitment process, our recruiters will definitely give students a chance with a lower GPA to explain their college experience, how they felt. And if a candidate wows us or wows the hiring manager in other ways, we never let GPA be the final deciding factor on whether to move forward.
That's great to know. Thank you for that. And Jeff?
So my suggestion always is if you've got it, you flaunt it when it comes to GPA. You know, I'm probably not putting anything definitely under a 3 on a resume. And that's just so it doesn't beg the question. Not to say that people with under a 3 aren't, you know, successful within employment and everything else, but it's just kind of the suggestion I always give. The majority of companies are going to be looking at what your degree is in, and then how you can explain your previous experience, your internships, the projects you've done within that, and talk about the successes you've had. There may be some positions that do have GPA requirements on them, and just make sure you note that while you're going through the application process. That none of our roles have GPA requirements on them because we want people that are the most interested and that meet the basic and preferred qualifications to fit into those positions, regardless of what their GPA is. But yeah, you heard my tagline.
Great. All right. And Pamela, any requirements from a GPA perspective at your organization, or if not, just thoughts on it?
Yeah, so we don't have any GPA requirements at all. And so me personally, I don't think necessarily just because you have the highest GPA makes you the most successful candidate for the job. Necessarily, like we look at things like just like, you know, grit and persistence and things like all these other factors that like could make you curiosity. I think Mark, you said that earlier. Passion, drive, all those kinds of things. And just because you don't have a 4.0 or whatever doesn't mean that you don't have those qualities. So I would say GPA isn't necessarily the most important thing. And I agree with Jeff, if you have it, flaunt it. If you don't even include it on your resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Deanna.
I definitely concur with everyone, with all of the other panelists. You know, it's an indicator, but it's not a determining factor. And when I say indicator, more so to Jeff's point, you know, if you're hitting at a 4.0, you know, 3.0, what have you, it definitely lets us know, you know, your work ethic in that as far as from a performance perspective. But if not, highlight those same characteristics in other ways. Whether it's, you know, if you're the team captain somewhere, or if you know, where you volunteer at, if you're the lead there, or, you know, so there are definitely other ways to where you can highlight your success. And that's really what's most important, is you putting your best foot forward, you selling yourself, and really communicating who you are holistically.
Excellent. Great.
Can I add something too? I was just thinking, because I've talked to numerous students over the last year or so during the pandemic, and everybody learns differently. And so I think moving to the virtual learning has been difficult for a lot of people. And so I don't want anybody to feel like you should be ashamed about that or anything, because it is impacting people. And so just be aware that, you know, we understand these things.
Mm-hmm. And Pamela, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it brings me to another question. I think maybe somebody else mentioned the concept of grit, flexibility, and adaptability. And what I'm learning is that a lot of recruiters are actually asking questions about that through the lens of how individuals have been able to navigate the circumstances over the past year. How often does that conversation or question specifically related to the pandemic and transitions, how often does it come up in your processes? Maybe Pamela, if you'd like to start, and then anyone else can chime in.
Yeah, and I would say just Centene in general, like one of our core leadership values is being agile and being able to adapt and being flexible. So pandemic or no pandemic, it's just as part of our particular corporate culture, like you need to be able to adapt because things change really quickly. We're a very dynamic organization. So I would say somebody who isn't able to be flexible in all situations is probably not going to be successful at Centene. So it is something that we value in general for anybody coming into the organization. And if you are going to grow and be successful in the organization, you have to have those, you know, characteristics and be willing to exhibit that.
Oh yeah, I agree. These are skill sets that don't have any timeline on it. So you're right about that. Any other pandemic related questions that have now been embedded into anyone's interview process?
What I will say is that I know as a talent acquisition professional, I add that to my opening. as far as how we're handling the pandemic.
I hear you.
So I make sure that my candidates are well aware of, our status as it relates to our, in office or out of office or remote, not remote situation per role. I make an effort to highlight that. In addition to that, I also highlight what steps we've taken in order to ensure that we're keeping our team members safe. And then I also highlight, again, the wins. So for us, we were one of the first in our industry to get PPE equipment to our field team members. Those are the type of things I like to communicate. So that way, those candidates are feeling a little bit more secure in that, I'm joining an organization that's going to be compassionate to me and my needs. I also communicate some of the policies, that have come out of, the pandemic, which is, we've been afforded the opportunity to block off time as needed for family. So when, a lot of the families were doing virtual learning, straight from our CEO, block off the time you need to support, your family, block off your lunches, so that you can have that positive work-life balance. So, from a pandemic perspective, I like to highlight a lot of those changes that we've made as an organization, just so that I can continue to convey, what type of organization that they're interviewing with.
Good. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
both on the pandemic and then, well, it could be related to pandemic, but one of the things I always like to know, especially from students or people coming into their first professional experience, is talk to me about a time you failed or you had to overcome adversity. And people that don't have examples of failures or adversity are not very attractive candidates to our organization, because with how flexible and agile and much we work in the gray, you're going to fail. You're going to have adversity within a role. Everything is not just going to go smoothly all of the time. So people that are able to talk about their strategies in those situations, whether it's work related or school related, definitely can stand out. Or just even talking about overcoming, hey, I was used to going out with my friends and unwinding on the weekend, and or I would go to work at a retail or restaurant job and I would make some cash. And that's what really got me through some school, or just being able to, play board games with someone in the dorm room. I mean, and not having those opportunities and how you mentally prepared and got yourself through those, or maybe you got sent home and had to hang out with your parents because the dorms closed. I couldn't imagine having to do that as a 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old off at school. So, I mean, just being able to frame and think about those types of things and being prepared with those answers, and knowing that when people ask you those questions, we really want something with some sustenance, not just, well, this person wasn't very good, so or at a project, so me being the perfectionist I am, I just picked up the slack and completed it and we got an A. Something real out of those questions is something that we love to hear.
So it sounds like you're saying those behavioral questions are just as important as the technical questions. And Jeff, I think it was you who earlier said that your organization are looking for people who are just real humans that can show that side of them that's not necessarily robotic and about the job, but about how individuals are able to recover from real life circumstances. So that's great. Yeah. Mark, did you have any final thoughts on that piece as well?
Sure. So I can definitely sympathize with this question. I myself was a senior in college and working this part-time job as everything closed down. So I both experienced the shift from the school side as well as the work side. I was working 5 to 10 hours with Prometheus as I was moving back home to my parents and having to adjust with school. So that's definitely something, like Jeff had mentioned, one of those adversity questions. It's definitely something that I have experienced with school. So it's, if nothing else comes to mind, you guys almost have a perfect talking point for that sort of question. Definitely having to move to online school unintentionally is a huge adversity to come through. I can speak from experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pamela, you mentioned that adaptability, I believe, is one of your core leadership values. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one of the ways that students or really any applicants should be preparing as they are stepping into interview opportunities is by looking at what those core values are of the organization, the mission, the vision, so that they can really speak to their own alignment in those areas, their growth opportunities, plus their strengths, so that number one, you know, the recruiter can see them as someone who has done their research, understands a bit about the organization, but then also demonstrates how they bring some things to the table that's in alignment with the values of the organization. Would that be correct?
Yes, definitely,
Great.
definitely. And I love being in healthcare, just specifically, like I love hearing about maybe people's personal stories as to why they're interested in healthcare, and related to that as well. Like, and I think that could be particular for any industry if you have a personal story that you can share when it comes to that. Like, if you've ever had to deal with a family member who was sick or had issues or whatever. I just love hearing those stories because it makes it very personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We will take this moment to shift gears slightly. I know that Deanna brought up the concept of even professional wear, even through virtual interviews. So let's talk about that. Just how does your organization within that industry, within those functions, define professional dress? But then what does that look like actually in an interview, whether that is virtual or if candidates are coming into the office for the interview? And I'll allow anyone to chime in and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So I'll start with that. As far as professional dress, you want to kind of stick to solid colors. And I always recommend black, blue, gray. You know, just so that, you know, it's more conservative, it's less distracting. Collared shirts for gentlemen, you know, ladies, just something that's going to cover you. It's kind of the guidance that I provide. Because honestly, you don't want anything that's going to distract from what you're saying. And that's really the biggest piece, is you want to dress in such a way to where, one, it communicates that you take the role seriously, that you're able to rise to the expectation of the professionalism of that opportunity. And then you want to be able to have such a clean slate to where someone can focus wholly on what you're saying and less on what you're wearing. And if I could just circle back briefly, I know we had talked about kind of having that information about the organization readily prepared. Just another tip or tidbit is social media. Nowadays, a lot of organizations are leveraging social media to really communicate what's most important to them or what's happening within the organization on a more current, recent basis. So I always, you know, advise my candidates to check the company's Twitter page, their Facebook page, LinkedIn, to have those stories readily available if you need something to kind of, you know, a tidbit to discuss or to leverage during the interview.
Good tip. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, add not necessarily about professional dress, but professional behavior and etiquette. And I think virtually there's some nuances as well. Like, you want to be in a quiet place. Deanna mentioned earlier, you know, checking that your technology works and the link works and that you're prepared from that perspective. Lighting in the room, background in terms of what you have, so nothing's super distracting. Some of you may have roommates, so making them aware that, you know, you have an interview and to be aware of that you'll be interviewing. So just things like that to think about as well.
Excellent. Yeah.
I think you can get a lot out of the scheduling of your interview as well. I'll say, if you're doing on-campus interviews, which obviously are going to be all virtual this year, and you know, you're just signing up for an interview slot, dress to impress. Just like the rest of the board or panelists said, obviously you don't want to wear anything that could be construed as distracting to the interviewer, because you want to have that full conversation, that full interview time, and have that be the focus. But for the interviews that aren't on campus that a coordinator or a recruiter is calling you up, ask them, hey, what do people typically wear? What would you suggest I wear in this? Again, it's just showing an extra level of interest. Because from what I can let you know is a lot of our hiring team interviews, the peer interviews, kind of that panel level, people on our team are going to be wearing what they're wearing while they're at work. So it might be a t-shirt and backward baseball hat, because that's our company culture when we're working remotely, not speaking with customers and working internally. Our company culture when we go into the office is nothing tattered on the bottom and a collar on top for guys, and shorts on Friday. So that's how on Fridays during the summer. And that's a lot about our culture. But the safest bet is always dressing to impress without being distracting on your first round interview. And then you're going to know a lot more about the culture of the interview process coming out of that.
Knowing the culture is important, and maybe just dress for success and style up slightly until you get to be a part of that culture. Anyone else on that, or any other pieces of dress or etiquette?
Sure. So I can speak. Prometheus is definitely a startup feel company. We're not necessarily the size of a startup anymore, but for a long time we were under 200 people. So we typically we have the culture of a startup. So I can speak. We pretty much dress down throughout days in the office. So our recruiters definitely let our candidates know the dress that they should arrive with in our in-person interviews. It's never a full suit level or anything like that. It's definitely business to business casual. But I'd say throughout working days at Prometheus, at least, we have definitely a startup culture in our dress code opinions.
Excellent, excellent. Before we shift gears again, I just want to market something else that our students on the line can consider if you are looking for professional wear. Our office, we have applications open for our Styled for Success grant. If you are in need of funding for a business suit, other professional wear for an interview, whether that may be for in-person or virtual, we do support that. If you go to careers.unc.edu and search for Styled for Success, you will see that application and all of its guidelines. So just wanted to take an opportunity to promote that to everyone on the line here today. At this time, I would like to open it up for any questions from our student audience, as we've been sharing a lot of concepts from transferable skills to technical skills to levels and layers of interviews, how to communicate, professionalism. What questions specifically comes to your mind that maybe we haven't yet touched upon? And anyone that's willing to do that, you can just take yourself off of mute. Any questions at
Hello.
all?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Jack, yes, please.
Yeah, so yes, you guys mentioned certifications when you're looking at through some resumes. I was just curious because one of you mentioned, like, I think IBM or Google's certification. I have a certification with DataCamp, and I was wondering if you guys are familiar and if that has any value added to a resume.
Sure. So I brought that up as something I look for. I haven't had time myself to dig through a lot of the individual certifications, but when I see that on somebody's resume, I definitely make it a point to ask because in my head, I want to try to draw internal lines between what you've done experience-wise to those certifications and how they would play a role into your role or position at our company. So.
And just to chime in with Mark, I know anytime I see certifications listed on a resume, I also list those with the education. To me, that holds just as much weight and value. If you've taken the time and invested in getting that completed or those courses completed, I think it should be highlighted and provided, the managers made aware of those skills that that you're now certified in having.
what I can say off of that as well is if it's not a more popular or common, and Jack, I really appreciate the question, by the way. And honestly, I have no idea about anything about the certification. But if you did put in parentheses a dash after it, exactly what the emphasis was, it's something that myself or a hiring manager or someone else that was considering your resume certainly would Google. And that's kind of the beauty of everything. When I'm looking at resumes these days and I see company names I'm not familiar with, rather than always having to get all that information and spend that time, that's something that a lot of recruiters will do, is just kind of Google it so we can have that in our mind and circle back to how something like that would associate with the role. But kind of going back to the beginning of everything we were talking about, if that certification will help with basic preferred qualifications, something I would certainly proactively address within an interview situation or even a cover letter.
Great. I thank you, panelists, for being able to address that question to Jack about certifications. Anyone else who would like to take yourself off of mute if you have any questions?
Hi everybody. I'm a professor in the Department of Statistics and Operations Research at UNC. I was one of the people helping organize this event. And I think some of our students might actually just be curious about what kind of jobs, what kind of activities you guys do that would interest them, or that sort of connect to the skills that they're developing. That would be great to hear.
Well, I can start. I know currently I have an associate data scientist and a data scientist role that we're actively recruiting for now. And I've kind of dived into a little bit of what that would entail. The data product that they would be developing would help to support efforts for our marketing team. But our associate data scientist role is more of our entry-level position for our data scientist team. And so for that position, we'll definitely leverage someone that, is a recent grad, had an internship, or again, have some level of portfolio that they can leverage. Typically that interview process does include some level of coding tests, just so that we can kind of test the efficiency of the skill that they have. And then for the data scientist role, we're really looking for someone that has maybe 2 to 3 years experience, and possibly maybe the first job, or again, maybe a longer internship type opportunity or experience that can be able to assist the team from that perspective.
So we actually have 6 openings right now for the summer of 2022. They are all working with our FMCG organization in Manhattan. And this is the analyst positions are positions that virtually everyone at the organization starts with, which is really cool because you can see throughout the interview process, you interview with people all the way up to VPs that started out in the analyst roles. They're all going to start in July of 2022. There's one focused more on the BI, so on the front end of gathering information, or performance tracking and optimization, as well on the back end, which is a really cool aspect to that organization and really sets them apart as a data-driven marketing agency, is how much information they continue to provide as far as how the services are working, and then optimizing those services for our clients. And also a creative strategies role, which does have an analytics component to it, but for someone that is more interested in being on the business side of, and those are all first year, it's located in Manhattan. So the compensation expectation is over, into the 6 figures for first year and things like that, and really gives people that opportunity, that have that flexibility, that want to try or want to live in New York City or the New York City area and experience that opportunity, and have be compensated for the work they're doing for the organization. But at Deluxe Corporation, pretty much at all times, we have business analyst positions available in either Atlanta or the Twin Cities market. So, there would be some relocation that would take place if everyone's on campus right now. But again, really opportunities to be in tech innovative centers and areas. And Minnesota is not as cold as people think it is. It was 100 like 6 times this year. So no, I'm just kidding. But our winters are a little different than North Carolina. But having the space in Atlanta, having the space in Minnesota, I just always encourage people to check out our job site at jobs.deluxe.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. You can even register just for the talent community, so you receive notifications anytime a position is listed with the keywords you list. So, little plug.
Great. And both, I know our Deluxe positions in the past, Deanna, you at Advanced Auto, that positions have been posted in Handshake. And if both Jeff, Deanna, and any of you would like to, I know Pamela, you've already done so, share your contact information, or maybe put in the chat any other ways that students should be either going right to your careers page, following your pages on LinkedIn, both your own pages or the organization's pages, to stay on top of activities, postings, and other things, as some of you mentioned about, staying tapped into social media to be aware of, what activity and movement is happening within your organization. Pamela and or Mark, any other additions to that question?
Sure. So I can speak to the people working on my team. Typically, what that role implies, it's a lot of SQL development. So there's a technical aspect to it. It's working a lot with our databases. So, and we have our own proprietary visualization tool because we work so closely with SAP and other plant maintenance data. So I work partially on the development side of things, working out features and fixing bugs and whatnot on our visualization tool. And then our analysts work behind the scenes on that tool, doing the data analysis or making reports and whatnot. And a cool thing is the fact that I manage both teams is that we work close together, and that our analysts throughout interactions with customers or throughout their usage of developing these like SQL queries and whatnot can request features to me, and it goes back and forth. So you have an input into the software development cycle as well.
Excellent.
And I think I mentioned this before, and I was just actually scrolling through our internship opportunities, which are not yet posted, but they will be soon in the next couple of weeks. But just anything from like clinical analytics, financial analytics, business intelligence, machine learning, in our population health area. So there's a lot of different possibilities when it comes to analytics. Member orchestration, which is under our digital systems team. So there's a lot of possibilities when it comes to that data analytics.
Great, that's excellent. And so what I'm hearing, Pamela, and really from all of you, thank you for sharing either contact information or where our students can go for more information, is to stay tuned, because a lot of movement means to be aware as things get posted. And maybe this leads me to my next question as well, is communication and follow-up. How do, I know recruiters, company representatives have different perspectives on how they welcome and are willing to engage with students to answer questions about positions, or even follow up after someone has applied to a position. How do you prefer to be engaged with and to answer those types of questions? And that goes to anyone who would like to share.
I always lean on LinkedIn. I don't mind being connected with as many people as possible. I think it's only advantageous on everyone's end. And then also as a recruiter, I kind of live on it, basically use it as my instant messenger these days. So it's usually the quickest way to get a response on my end. However, if you want a little bit more of a formal contact, of course, email. You can always feel free to try to always return those. I think most people are on kind of the 24-hour policy whenever possible. So, but really anything that coming from my perspective, anything that's shared with you from a recruiter that has any contact information on it, I think you can always feel free to reach out to.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I personally appreciate the outreach in whatever mode that is, and any type of engagement, especially in this virtual world we're living in. I think you can stand out, and obviously don't send emails every day, but the more you do engage with us, the more we'll remember you. So different touch points along the way.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Absolutely. I concur with Pamela and with Jeff. I'm always open to email or to be connected with on LinkedIn. I also agree that, having those touch points or being able to remain in contact, and also even in the interview process, maintaining communication. So, if they've given you a timeline that they're going to follow up, feel free the day after and say, hey, just reaching out, wanted to let you know I'm still interested. Again, it goes back to helping them to see you in the role, helping them to understand that you're still excited about the opportunity, you're invested. All of that goes a long way.
Wonderful.
I'll say from a hiring manager's side, a lot of what my recruiters receive feedback after interviews from the candidates, they tend to share with me, and I really appreciate hearing it. I know my recruiters definitely appreciate hearing from their candidates via email, phone. They do follow-up calls after interviews. So a lot of that feedback tends to get shared back with me. It helps me improve my interview process as well as understand how it went from their point of view.
Excellent. So maybe the last component of our interview questions will be about offers, whether we're talking about internship offers, but really also full-time offers. What room do students have for negotiation, or how do you welcome that conversation with students to think about salary or other forms of negotiation? For many students, this will be their first time being presented with offers of this magnitude, and a lot of times something major for students to wrap their head around, because this means now their livelihood for the first time out of school, being on their own, possibly relocation if they want to go to Jeff in Minnesota. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I know from our perspective, we try to be competitive with the market, but I cannot stress enough. I do a lot of coaching, and this is a piece that I mention often, is knowing what your number is. So, you can't pay your bills off of a company's range. You pay it based off of your base and your total compensation. So in that, knowing what it's going to take for you to sustain your lifestyle, and then requesting that. If the organization that you're interviewing with are not able to meet that need, then you may need to find, an organization that will. But being able to confidently communicate what you need, and then being confident enough to come back and say, hey, I love the organization, but can we add $10,000, $15,000? Or, can we discuss a relocation package? It's been numerous of times when I've had these types of conversations with entry-level talent, and you want so badly to help, but then, ethically, you represent the organization. So I try as best as I can to kind of give these gems in these settings to say, it's okay to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. But we can only help you as far along as you help yourself. So that's I'm getting off my soapbox now.
Great perspective. Thank you for that advice. Definitely.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I was going to add to that too, like doing some research on what these types of positions are paying, so you have an idea, but also understanding geographic location. For every company, this factors into it. So depending on what city or area of the country that is, there's different pay scales based off of cost of living factors. So there are a bunch of tools out there where you can see that and have an idea of what that looks like.
Great. Do your research, have a frame of reference of what you're even asking for. Yes. Jeff and or Mark?
Yeah, where I always lean with this is don't just follow a rule because you heard it. Just because someone said always counter with 10% over, because you'll fall with at least 5% more, something along those lines. Listen to what recruiters tell you, because for the most part, especially entry level or internship recruiters are pretty straightforward. Deluxe, we pay what we pay for interns. There's no negotiation. That's how our internship program is set up. That's how we budget. That's how our yearly company, everything else is budgeted. So there's no room for movement. With our marketing analyst positions in New York City, we feel like we are very competitive with what we're offering. And because we're hiring so many of them at the same level, it is what it is. But I'm very upfront with candidates throughout that part of the process in the interviews when we're talking about benefits and pay and sign-on bonus and everything else. I just say straight up, it is what it is. I know everybody tells you to negotiate, but if an offer comes here, I will let you know if you counter that offer that the team might go with someone else that they know is going to be happy with this. Now, if it's an entry level or a first time role and it's not part of one of these programs, there may be flexibility within the budget. So, and that's something that you're free to ask. And I think it would be remiss or really unethical the other way if a recruiter didn't say, there very well may be. But when you ask for that extra 10 or 15 or whatever percent you're asking for, make sure you understand why you're asking for that position and have a reason. If it is that extra certification, if you're bringing over what the basic and preferred qualifications are, if there's an aspect to the job that you have a certain sort of specialization in, or like we said, if you've done your market research and said, I could even show this to you that what people are paying for this in this market is this position. And that's really what I'm looking for at that time. And that's why I'm asking to see if you can get there. So don't just ask for additional salary just because someone told you. Always ask for at least 10 or 15% more, so you land somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. Because if the recruiter turns around and says, sure, I have no problem going back to the team, why should I tell them that you're asking for this? And if you say, well, I'd just like to make a little bit more money, it puts you in a tough negotiation spot.
Understood. Good advice. Mark, any words on that from your perspective?
Yeah, I was going to add to what Jeff had touched on. It's definitely the right move to ask your recruiter, even right as you receive the offer, you can say, is this position open for negotiation? Because a lot of our entry level ones are, like Jeff was saying, at Deluxe, our internships are generally fixed. But when we calculate our salary, we come prepared with reasons. So like what he was saying, you should be ready to justify why you should be asking for more, because we think we have a good. I think that throughout my process of hiring, that I have good reasons of what I offer these candidates. So I'd like to hear if they're expecting more, or what they expect because of it.
Great. Excellent advice across the board. I truly appreciate that. And I know that everyone else on the line appreciates hearing that too. Since we are coming to the conclusion of this panel, I just want to take another moment to thank everyone up to this point for your contributions and great knowledge and expertise. I would like to have each panelist, and so we'll go in the order in which we start, to share any final words, thoughts about interviewing and putting your best foot forward as individuals engage in either internships or their job search. So we'll start with Deanna.
First and foremost, again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity. This has been amazing to be able to pour in some knowledge and really talk through what the interview process is now today, especially as it's been affected by the pandemic. As I mentioned, my contact information is provided in the chat. I'm more than open to connecting with anyone on LinkedIn. And even if it's more from if you have additional questions or you want to follow up or, you want some additional guidance, I'm more than willing to be able to be a mentor or a guide from that perspective as well. So again, as I mentioned prior, we do have current active roles that we are actively recruiting for in the data science and data analytics field. The two roles I mentioned, the associate data science and the data scientist role, I'm the direct recruiter for. So like I said, we have additional roles, but those two specifically, I know I'm directly handling, and we would welcome anybody that's on the call and is interested. One other thing I was going to mention is that when you apply, we do ask the source, and I do ask that you put that you've heard of the roles or the opportunities from the symposium. That helps us to be able to track the effectiveness of, the outreach that we're doing, and also it helps us to, we try to do our due diligence to make sure that when we attend these community events, that we're also giving, you all the white glove experience as well, because, we've made that connection, and we want to make sure that we're fostering that and helping to guide you through the process when you apply. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Feel free to reach out, and hopefully I'll be hearing from some of you here shortly.
Great. Thank you, Deanna. Pamela.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope this was really helpful for you as you move forward in your journey of school and career and full-time opportunities down the line, or in December, as one of you at least is coming up on. A couple things that I would say is I always promote networking because it's a great way to get to know people and to build those relationships. And as a recruiter, I look at long-term relationships. So maybe you might not have been a fit for one role, but you might be for another. So don't give up. Don't end the relationship. Continue to build that, because that's what it's about. And when you're interviewing, bring your authentic self. We want to see who you are. Besides what your skills are, we want to know who you are. And when it comes to building your resume, make sure you do an internship, work somewhere, join a club, take on a leadership role, volunteer, so you have all those experiences on your resume, because it's not always about those technical skills necessarily. It's building up the whole picture, as we've said. And if you are interested in full-time roles now, you have my email. And then if you're interested in internship opportunities as well. So I'm happy to help bring anybody through the process.
Excellent. Thank you, Pamela. Jeff.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everyone participating on the panel, and then of course everyone that attended. This has been just a great experience on my end to be able to answer some questions, share some knowledge, but also to learn from colleagues or other people in the areas that I work. Really, what I suggest and what I always talk about people moving forward, Pamela hit on big time, is you being authentic in yourself and really thinking about what you want to do and the career path you want to take. And even if that's not where you end up, what your passion is for right now is the direction you want to go, because that's going to come out throughout interview process with any organizations. The people that are excited, that are passionate, they're the ones that are going to get the opportunity. The people that think that, hey, this might just be a good opportunity, or I could make some money, starting out in this, that also comes out in the interview process. And hiring managers are very in tune, as well as recruiters, to the people that really are in depth. So I just always suggest to be more just have that knowledge of the company you're going into, have that background information, have kind of all those things around the job description, while knowing that inside and out and how it will associate with your skills moving forward. But also I put my, in the chat, I put my email address. If you just do Jeff Hansen Deluxe, I pop right up on LinkedIn. I've actually already got a connection. So from this, which is awesome. So thank you for already reaching out, and really know that talent acquisition professionals are there to support you. The reason the majority of us do our jobs is because there's nothing better than putting the right candidate in the right opportunity with the right hiring manager. So that's what our passion is for. So if you ever have any questions, anything along those lines, always feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Jeff, definitely. And Mark.
Yep, I just want to say first, thank you guys for the opportunity for me to represent Prometheus Group. I remember not too long ago being in your shoes, looking for my first career. I'll say that going to events like these will definitely put you on the right path. Understanding what makes a candidate impress employers and how to prepare for interviews will only make you stand out amongst your peers, especially first-time interviewees. You're able to tell, so being prepared will really set you out. I really appreciate the opportunity to represent Prometheus again, and maybe I'll see some of you guys soon.
Excellent. There you have it, everyone. Deanna Jackson, Pamela Baum, Jeff Hansen, Mark Summers. We appreciate your time, your expertise. This was a wonderful panel, very informative. And for those who are left on the line, please, if you haven't already done so, please make sure that you are registering for our Data Science and Analytics Virtual Career Fair that is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 15th. 1 to 5. It's a virtual fair on our Handshake platform. Employers such as the ones in front of us today will be represented. Think about what our experts have shared as far as how to market yourself, what your skill sets are, and how to communicate them effectively. And then thinking through that lens of the recruiter, what is expected of you to make sure that you are pursuing and then eventually are going to be placed into the position that's for you, whether that's an internship or full-time employment. So at this point, I'm going to stop recording and I am going to say farewell to everyone and have a great evening.